Welcome back to PhotoJoseph's Photo Moment, the Q&A portion of the show. We are doing a Q&A follow-up on this lens, the Panasonic Leica 15mm f1.7. If you have not watched the video on this yet, before you watch the Q&A, watch the video. We'll link to it right here to make sure that you know what we're talking about in the Q&A here. So this is a live Q&A. So for those of you who are watching live and are in the chat, you get to participate in this. Make sure you put out PhotoJoseph in front of it like Tony Smith did there so that I know that you've got a question for me. People talking about moving, so we're making a joke about my new mug here. I am the boss. It was a birthday present from my kids. They were quick to point out that I couldn't leave this at home because I'm clearly not the boss at home. But here, I get to be the boss, so there we go. I feel like a scene from that Office Space. I walk around with this mug all the time. Yeah. Okay, what do we got here? John Roberts. My only complaint about the lens hood, okay, is that the stops that keep the hood locked on the lens wear down super fast. My hood is always falling off. Now that's interesting. I've had this lens for 3-4 years, quite a long time. I don't know that I've ever had, I shouldn't say never, but I don't have, falling off is definitely not a problem. I mean, you can hear it lock in. And yeah, sure, it's not hard to take off, but there's also nothing to catch on it. So I've never had a problem with that. That's interesting that you've had an issue with it. I would say, let's see here, if I was having an issue with that, how would I solve this? I would get, what's that, it's not a glue, oh, help me out, chat room. It's like in arts and crafts stuff, it's kind of used for everything to fill in gaps or to kind of adhere stuff together. It's got a funky name like goopy stuff, I don't know. God, anybody have any idea what I'm talking about? There's this substance. Anyway, what I would probably do is get some of that mystery substance. Put that on the edges, on the little latches here. So here, let's go for a close-up on this. So we're talking about these little edges there. Just a tiny little bit, and kind of rub it over it just to thicken this up a bit. And once that was, as it was starting to dry, I would take this and kind of go on there and put it on a couple of times to just smooth it out and get it exactly where you want it. And then let it dry completely, and then I think you'd have a much better grip on there. That's probably how I would solve that. And then you could, even if it ended up being too thick, you could file it down a little bit just to thicken that up a little bit. Hodgepodge. That's the word I was looking for. It's called hodgepodge or Mod Podge, something like that. That would be it. Someone's suggesting plumber's tape. I think that might be too thick because you need a very, very thin layer of something extra in there. Anyway, hodgepodge or Mod Podge or Podge Wodge or something along those lines. Anyway, that would be my suggestion. All right. Hopefully that helps you, John Roberts, because that's not an issue that I've had, but I could certainly see how it could become an issue. Or, you know, the other solution would be to simply put it on there, take a piece of plumber's tape, as someone suggested, or gaff tape, whatever, and just tape it on. And that might work too. Anyway, get it on there. Maybe a tape wouldn't be too much. If you put a tiny little bit of tape and really like squish it on there, it would stay. There's a solution in there, no problem. Ben 5 Shuttle, I store the lens with the lens hood on, but I find it frustrating when I put the lens on the camera as my fingers catch the hood and it starts to undo, and or I catch the aperture ring. Interesting there too. So I guess I'm just so used to it. When I go to put it on, sure, like okay, right now as I took that off, it got a little bit loose in my hand, but I know when I put this in, it's just gonna go into my bag, it's all in there. Take it off, yeah, it's gonna go on there. Actually, so okay, here we go. I can tell you exactly. So let's just say, let me take this off again. I'm gonna loosen this. So I put it on. Let's get it back on there. Come in the right spot. Hello. There we go. So it's not on all the way right now. It is not on all the way. It is absolutely loose. Okay. So I'm deliberately not putting it on all the way. As I go to put this on the camera, it's the same rotation spinning it to lock it, lock the lens, as it is to lock the lens hood. So I think what I'm doing is just kind of out of habit is whenever I put this on, I am making sure that I spin everything so that both the lens hood and the lens are locking in place. So I just kind of grip onto everything and spin it. Because as you say that and I do it, I feel like that's what I do. It's just kind of a natural movement now because I put it on so many times, but I think that's probably what I do. Yeah, but it's never been so loose that it's been a problem for me. If it had been, then I would have done something about it by now. But hopefully that helps. Okay, Serge says, how noisy is the autofocus motor and aperture actuator thinking about getting the lens for shooting video? Okay, so the aperture actuator, if you're doing it manually, you can definitely hear that, no question about it. It's not going to be a stepless aperture. So it's not the kind of lens that you would want to adjust the aperture while shooting video, while rolling, because you would see the light drop. You would see that change. So regardless of how noisy it is or isn't, it's not a lens that you would want to change aperture while shooting video. So that's irrelevant. As far as the autofocus, I think it's, oh, I didn't have a battery in this camera, in this lens. Oh, I do, in this camera. It's probably a dead battery. I didn't prepare to actually demo the camera itself. I think it's, I can't say that it's noisy or quiet. I don't recall ever thinking that it was noisy in the slightest. So I'm going to say it's very, very quiet, just because it's not one that I am aware of. The only lens, there is one lens that I can think of that the aperture is noisy, and that is the 25mm f1.4 lens. That one, whenever the camera focuses it, or not focuses, but measures exposure, it kind of opens up the aperture all the way. So if you're stopped down, you hear it go zzz, zzz, every time, and that's that lens. This lens doesn't make any noise doing that. So hopefully that helps answer your question. It's, as far as I'm concerned, this lens is totally silent. Oh, and then John Roberts saying that he uses it for vlogging a lot and it's a very quiet lens. Awesome. John Roberts then says, starting by saying turn the lens to the A and then the dial on the camera to change the aperture. Yeah. Again, can't right now because don't have a proper battery in here, but John Roberts is saying works fine for him, and I'm telling you that it's not a lens that you're going to want to adjust the aperture while shooting because of that step down, stepping effect that you would get. If you really want to change the exposure while shooting, then put a variable ND filter on it. That's the way you should be adjusting the exposure anyway. And just in case you're kind of wondering, well, why not change the aperture? Keep in mind, okay, when you're shooting video, it's a little bit of a side step here, but an important thing to discuss. When you're shooting video or stills, when you're creating images with a camera, you have three things that equate for the exposure, right? You have your aperture, you have your shutter speed, and you have your ISO. Every single one of those changes something in the image, right? Your ISO is going to change the noise level. So if you change ISO while shooting, your noise level will change in the image, in the still or video. And so if we're thinking about video, if this changes while you're shooting, you could see your noise increase or decrease in the shot. Probably that is going to be the least offensive and least likely to be noticed thing to change. So shooting, video, and auto ISO is usually not a bad thing, especially if you're doing vlogging kind of stuff, then great, fine. Your shutter speed changing, or shutter angle, if you're going to go really high-tech about it, while you're shooting video, you generally don't want that to change because of how it affects the image, right? If you've got fast motion, you're going to get in a fast shutter speed, you're going to get that kind of staccato movement. A slower shutter speed, you're going to get that more blurry movement. And if that's changing while you're shooting, that's something you're probably going to see. If you change aperture while you're shooting, first of all, if it's not a stepless aperture ring, as most lenses that are designed for photography are not, then you are going to see a jump. You're going to see your image go from one exposure to slightly darker to slightly darker to slightly darker as you stop it down or brighten it up or whatever the case may be. But also your depth of field changes, right? So even if you have a totally stepless aperture, as you stop that lens down or open it up, your depth of field will change. Now, unless that's the effect that you're looking for, it's probably not something that you want happening when you're shooting video. So the only way then to control the amount of light coming in without changing any of those three things is to put the variable ND on it. We did a whole video on variable NDs not too long ago. We'll link to that right up here, and that will kind of help to explain that whole idea. But there you have the ability to control the light coming into the camera before it ever gets to the camera. So your three only controls that you have in the camera for adjusting exposure do not change while you're rolling. That's the key. You don't want to change them while you're rolling, usually, unless it's an effect you're after. Okay, total side thing, but hopefully that was interesting. All right, Jake Uptill, howdy my friend, says, I use a Sony camcorder style camera with a 1-inch sensor, okay, with a fixed lens, and have noticed that I get bokeh at both ends of the lens, either super wide and close up, or at the long end zoomed in. See, even on a 1-inch sensor, smaller than the Micro Four Thirds, you can get bokeh. So people who say you can't get bokeh on Micro Four Thirds, you slap them upside the head and show them some of these pictures. Christopher Pepe says, love this lens. Awesome, can get extremely close, great for flowers and bees. The 15 lives on my GX85. It's a perfect combination, isn't it? That's interesting, extremely. Okay, now I'm gonna have to get a battery. Hold on a second. Okay, hopefully I have one that's charged up around here somewhere. Let's see, I've got 2 batteries sitting right here, both labeled for this camera. I haven't shot with this in a while, so I have no idea if these are good or not. Let's find out. And then I'll be able to test your aperture. Oh, good, it lit up. I'll test out the noisy aperture thing for you as well. No memory card, that's fine. Okay, I'm going to go into manual focus. I don't even know what the closest focusing distance is. We're going to go all the way closest. And let's just see, and let's do a top down like this. Probably help if we actually focus. How did that camera get out of focus? That's weird. Okay, so there, and there's no light on there. I'll just overexpose it so you can see it. There we go. Is that? No. Okay, there we go. There we go. there's your closest focusing. So let's move that so you can actually see it. Okay, so there's your closest focusing distance. That's pretty good. I mean, that's a, hand away from the sensor. That's nice. That is quite close. I don't know that I had ever really tried to go super close with it, but there you go. That's kind of cool. Okay, so excellent. Thank you for pointing that out, Christopher. And then the aperture. So what we want to test is, let's see here. Let me adjust the aperture. Go into aperture priority, put it into A. There we go. Okay, so you're going to hear this dial moving, right? You're going to hear the dial moving, but let's see if you can hear the aperture moving. The clicking that I'm hearing is all this dial. So you got more noise coming from the dial itself than you do from the aperture changing. That's my opinion. Let me switch this into video mode, actually start rolling, and see what happens. Oh, there's no memory card in here. Anyway, it's virtually silent. You're fine. We've got someone else in the chat room saying that they're shooting vlogs with it. I think you're going to be happy with it. All right. Let's see. Anything else on here? Scrolling. There's a lot of conversation, but nothing with my name in front of it until we get here. Wherewithal Productions. What's up, PhotoJoseph? Howdy. I'm glad I could finally catch you live. Excellent. This lens is one of my absolute kit favorites. Look at that. See, lots of people love this lens. It's a beautiful lens. It really is. It really is. People talking about what cameras they're using. Awesome. Love the discussion. Ben Shuttle says, I went to update the firmware on my new 12-35 f2.8 Mark II lens. Okay. I don't have the copy of that lens. I still have the original one. New firmware 1.3. Awesome. Lens wouldn't update. Used a G9 and GH3. Still wouldn't update. You think it's because it's a Mark II. Well, the Mark II is definitely going to have its own firmware. If you're trying to use Mark I update on the Mark II, then clearly it's not going to work. They're totally different lenses. It may as well be a Nocticron. It's a completely different lens. So if the firmware update wasn't for that lens, then it's not going to work. Yeah, so the new firmware update, I don't know what that is, that firmware update 1.3. Let me just take a quick look. Let me see if I can find it. Okay, just a quick update. The show's over, but I want to clarify the thing about the firmware. We got to the bottom of this. So the firmware update for the 12-35 lens that we were talking about on the show is just for the original lens, the Mark I lens. Obviously, it's not called a Mark I, but the original lens. The new lens, the Mark II, does not have any new updates. And just for your own knowledge, so you know how to find these things and you know what update you're looking for, here's how we know. So if we go back to the update page that I was on this page, we didn't see a whole lot of info here. You don't have any ability to download. I'll link to this page because this is where you need to start. This will be linked down below. But if you scroll to the bottom of this page, you're going to find the agreement accept or don't accept. Once you click accept on here, now you see a bigger list. This is the actual up-to-date list. The one on the previous page really honestly is not fully up-to-date. So the lens that we're looking for is the 12-35. So it can be a little hard to find in here, but there it is. So the HHS 12-35. So this is the one we were talking about, the version 1.3. So there's a couple of clues in here. First of all, this was released in 2015. So the new lens, the Mark II, was not released until I think either early 2018 or late 2017. So that lens, this update clearly was not for that. But again, this model number, this is your key. So that HS12035, that is the old lens. If we look over at B&H, look at the B&H website. So here's the new lens, the Panasonic LUMIX GX Vario 1235 f2.8 Mark II. So there's the 2 lens. Look at the model number here. This is the model number for the new lens. It looks the same, but there's an extra A in there. So it's the HS. A indicates the second lens, 12035. So that's the new model. So if we go back to that page looking at the downloads, you'll see that there is no HSA update. If you don't see anything listed here, then that means that there isn't one. It doesn't exist. So hopefully that helps to clarify. The update for version 1.3 of the 12-35 f2.8 lens is only for the original Mark I version of the lens. The Mark II version, the current new version of that lens, does not have a firmware update. It is still at 1.0 as it was originally shipped. All right, back to the show. I didn't think I saw anything on the website indicating whether it was a Mark I or Mark II. If it doesn't say Mark II, then it's a Mark I. Because remember, no lens is marketed as a Mark I, right? No one does that or ever would do that, because then that would simply be saying, wait, don't buy this one, there's a Mark II coming. And generally manufacturers don't know if they're going to make a Mark II until the original has been on the market for a while and they determine whether it needs an update, it's worth updating, whatever the case may be. Remember, the 12-35 f2.8 original versus the Mark II has better performance in dual IS, than the Mark I has, and it has better weather sealing, and I'm pretty sure those are the only differences. I might be wrong, there might be something else. Well, the color, it's a black instead of the kind of gunmetal gray, so it's a slightly different color, but that's effectively, as far as I remember from it, that's pretty much the only difference. So it would make sense that there would be an update for the old one, and it would not be labeled Mark I, it would just be for the 12 to 35, especially if the update came out before the Mark II was released. So that's what I'm guessing, my friends. That's what I'm guessing. So if I learn otherwise, I'll let you know, but I'm pretty sure. Christopher Pepe says, I shot a great TV commercial with a 15 and won an award. Love that. Congratulations. Can we see that anywhere? That'd be awesome. Drop a link in here, or I think if you drop a link, I think Ryan will be able to approve it. And either way, just give me that link. I'll put it in the show description. That'll be awesome. So anybody watching this, assuming that is something that is available to be seen on YouTube, we'll link to it down below. That'd be awesome, Christopher. I want to see it. Okay, that is the last one. Excellent. All right, guys, thank you very much for tuning in today. Sorry for the late show. Hopefully that worked out for some of you better than others. And yeah, that's it. So Monday, next week is going to be weird because I'm going to be gone from Tuesday through the end of the week. I'm going to be down in LA for Vid Summit. I have no idea if I'll be able to go live at all from there, so I'm not going to promise anything other than I'll do a show on Monday like normal. Also, the live training will be moved to Monday from Thursday so that I can get that out in the week. So we're doing 2 live shows on Monday. If you missed the new live training that was yesterday, by the way, I started a new live training series on LUMIX Pro, the very advanced video shooting app for your smartphone or tablet, and it's on both iOS and Android. Yesterday's video was the overview, so it's the free to everyone. It will be re-uploaded tomorrow morning, Saturday 9 a.m., so you'll be able to watch that in its entirety if you want to. And of course, from there, we'll be going deep diving into individual components and features and so on of that app. So if you are into shooting high-end video on your smartphone, then it is definitely a training that you're going to want to see. All right, folks, that's it. We're out of here. Take care of yourselves. Have a good weekend. We'll see you next week.